Govinda, Lord Govinda, Adipurusham, the original person. Tam, him. Aham, I. Bhajami, worship. Translation. The Brahmas and other lords of the mundane worlds appear from the pores of the Mahavishnu and remain alive for the duration of his one exhalation. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, for Mahavishnu is a portion of his plenary portion. Purport. The description of the Lord's creative energy is from the Brahma Samhita 548, which Lord Brahma compiled after his personal realization. When Mahavishnu exhales, the spiritual seeds of the universe emanate from him in the form of molecular particles like those that are visible 3 times the size of an atom when sunlight is diffused through a small hole. In these days of atomic research, it will be a worthwhile engagement for atomic scientists to learn from this statement how the entire universe develops from the spiritual atoms emanating from the body of the Lord. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gnana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So just to put this verse in context of the chapter, of what's actually being discussed, I want to read the first verse from the chapter, because Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he tends to write a summary verse. The first verse captures the theme of the entire chapter. So therefore, when we just look at the first verse, then we'll get an idea. And that first verse is Vande Nanda Bhutaishwaryam Shinichanandamiswaram Yacheche Tatswarupam Agyena Rupa Nirupyate. Translation. Let me offer my obeisances to Lord Srinityananda, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose opulence is wonderful and unlimited. By his will, even a fool can understand this identity. So, this is the topic being covered in this 5th chapter of the Adi Lila of Chaitanya Charitamrita, namely Lord Nityananda, and how Lord Nityananda is manifesting himself. And Lord Nityananda is, of course, none other than Balaram. And Lord Nityananda, as Balaram, is the servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but also the servant. As Krishna, or Lord Chaitanya, Krishna Chaitanya, is known as Sevya Bhagavan, the Lord who is served. Sevya is the goal of service. So, Krishna or Chaitanya, Krishna Chaitanya is the goal of service. But Balaram, he is Sevak Bhagavan. He is the Lord in the mood of a servant. So Balaram is always focused on serving Krishna. So Nityananda in the same way. Nityananda Balaram. So Lord Nityananda then, he is, as Balaram, he is representing the Sandhini Shakti. Radharani is the embodiment of the Ladini Shakti, or of the pleasure potency, and Lord Nityananda is the Sandhini Shakti, the existence potency. So all existence is basically resting upon Balaram. In the Chaitanya Bhagavat, this is elaborately described. And in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, we find a description how Balaram is not only the origin of the material world, he is, from him also, the Purusha avatars manifest. That means Mahavishnu, Garbhadaksaya Vishnu, Kshirodaksaya Vishnu. All these forms are expansions from Balaram. And it says even the spiritual world itself, even Vrindavan, is Balaram. It's Balaram who manifests Vrindavan. So this is Balaram, who is the origin of existence as the Sandhini Shakti. Balaram then, he said, as Sankarshan. Sankarshan is also known as Jiva. Not that Sankarshan is a Jiva, a living being, but Sankarshan is described as Jiva because he is the source of the agglomerate of Jiva, or which means of all the total Jivas. All the total Jivas find their origin in Balaram, in Lord Nityananda. So this chapter is just showing how much Nityananda is actually involved with all the living beings, because he is the origin, the living beings manifest through him, and then the world in which we live is also really expanding from him. It is then Balaram now in the form of Nityananda who is particularly reaching out to all living beings and overlooks their limitations. So he is not concerned. And why is it so? It is described earlier in this chapter how Lord Balaram, Lord Nityananda Balaram, that Lord Nityananda is always serving Lord Chaitanya. And as a result, he is so blissful that he becomes intoxicated. And because he's intoxicated, he's not able to distinguish anymore who is qualified, who is not qualified to get the mercy. So just whenever is it alive, give it the mercy. That's Nityananda, no distinction. And so here in this particular chapter, we are seeing then how there's in this verse how Mahavishnu is described, and that means we're now looking at the Purusha avatars who are expansions from Balaram. That is what we are seeing, and for a moment Srila Prabhupada is focusing on Mahavishnu and how gigantic Mahavishnu is and how entire universes are coming from the pores of his body. The pores are very small holes. Srila Prabhupada mentioned that when mosquitoes sting us, that we know that they have a needle on their nose, sort of. But it said they don't actually sting, they actually use the existing holes. Prabhupada explains they go into the pores, which is logical. I mean, why would you make a hole when there is already so many? So it says the mosquitoes use the existing pore holes. Anyway, so the pore holes are rather small, but the pore holes of the Lord's whole universes are coming from there. So this whole kind of vision of a macrocosmos and a microcosmos is something depicted in Bhagavatam and in the Brahma Samhita, which reiterates the same philosophy of Srimad Bhagavatam and now repeated in Chaitanya Charitamrita, because the Chaitanya Charitamrita is simply an expansion of the Bhagavatam, because it is describing the life of the person Bhagavat, namely Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates, who is like Bhagavatam personified. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would teach the Bhagavatam and live the Bhagavatam. In this way, we can see how Chaitanya Charitamrita is connected to the Srimad Bhagavatam. Although Srila Prabhupada in the purport is inviting scientists to go and look at these cosmic atoms coming from or those particles coming from the body of Mahavishnu, which are like atoms in relation to Mahavishnu, and how these atoms are the building blocks of the universe. All right. So Srila Prabhupada is inviting the scientific mind to see in a yet bigger perspective than the normal dimension where we are perceiving, but to perceive the universe from the dimension of the perspective of the Supreme Lord. That's fine. That's fine. But we personally, as practicing Vaishnavas, we don't have a particular great interest in the universe. As we are concerned, the universe is, as Srila Prabhupada would call it, a bad bargain. Or sometimes he said, the entire material world, that's not even just the universe, but that's all of them together, the whole Mahatattva. Prabhupada would say, the Mahatattva is an anartha. It's an anartha, an unwanted stumbling block, actually. And is it just while we're in this material world, make the best use of a bad bargain? So, it's like, as far as the material universe, and we could, from our perspective, we could go just delete. No. Okay, that's one problem less. We got rid of the universe. Right? We see that's coming up in the Chaitanya Charitamrita when Vasudeva Datta is desiring to deliver all the living beings within the universe and says to the Lord, please transfer the karma of all these living beings upon me, and then so that they can all go back to Godhead. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, my dear Vasudeva, this is really not needed. He says there are so many universes, just like there are mustard seeds in a bag. Yeah, it's like can no longer oversee how many there are. So many. And he said if one mustard seed would go missing, he wouldn't notice it. He said in the same way, if one universe, if all the living beings would go back and would cease to exist, you wouldn't even notice it. Right? And he says, and there's no need for you to take the karma of all these living beings. Simply your desire that they'll all go back to God, that's enough. They'll all go. Anyway, so there's some discussion about all the living beings going back to Godhead, about a universe dissolving and just disappearing, and how insignificant it is. So this kind of descriptions make us realize the insignificance of the material predicament. Predicament meaning of the troublesome situation. Srila Prabhupada is describing the material energy and says that the material energy leaves us perplexed. That somehow or other, this illusory energy creates all kinds of combinations and situations where you don't know what to do anymore. And you're just perplexed. What do we do now? Right? I guess many of us get, from time to time, get in these, what do we do now situations. It's like, fortunately, amidst all of that, at least we can chant Hare Krishna. Right? That is just one thing we can do when it comes to what do we do now. Materially, sometimes there's nothing you can do anymore, really. Like the world situation right now is one of those. What do we do now? Right? I was just in Simachalam, and of course the question of the day came up: are you vaccinated? And the answer is, do you think? What do you think? Do you think Prahlad would be vaccinated? How about that answer? I think it's a good answer. At least I liked it myself. When you like an answer, then it's a good one. So anyway, what shall we do? We are here in the material world, making the best use of a bad bargain. And I'm sorry to sound so pessimistic, but the truth of the matter is, it's not going to get any better. This may sound a little bit like a doomsday prophet, but no, this is the material world. There are no survivors. What shall we say? There is no happy end on the material platform. On the material platform, it's just the end. The lion appears on the screen, and some names scroll on the screen, and then the movie is over. I'll have some water on that. Vaishnavas see these things as humorous. They think it's funny because they look at the eternal perspective. They look at, yes, und dann ist alles kaputt. Yeah. In German it sounds much better than in English. Und alles kaputt. Yeah. It's a ha-ha, yeah. And not cynical, but actually blissfully laughing, because as Prabhupada discussed with Dr. Wolf Rotkai, he says, not only does the living entity not die, he said, the body, right? The body doesn't die. He said, because it was never alive in the first place. So that solves that problem. Bodies don't die because they're not alive. It's only the soul that moves to that matter. So we can move on from all this matter, from bodies, universes, and all these things, and leave them for what they are, and look at what really interests us, the mercy of Nityananda, and the blissfulness of Nityananda. Because the mercy of Nityananda is that we become lifted up to that level of ananda, of eternal bliss. Now, this is what we're interested in. Not just some fleeting happiness, but something that stays. Something that is substantial and that is really deep and lasting. And how beautiful is that described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. When we see that reference in Adi Lila chapter 4 about the competition between the qualities of Krishna and the love of Radharani, and how Krishna's qualities are unlimited, and so is Radharani's love. And she is always discovering a new quality in Krishna. And as soon as she finds that quality, she loves that also. And then she finds yet another quality. And again, she loves that. In this way, her love for Krishna is eternally increasing. And when we think about that, that's not only in the case of Radharani, that is in the case of everyone. That is devotional service. it's sort of in the beginning a little hesitant. Well, I don't really love Krishna, but he is kind of nice, isn't it? Some sort of hesitant appreciation of Krishna. This is the seat of love. Where there's appreciation, this is the seat of love. Love begins with appreciating something. I mean, it's like, I love this place. I mean, it usually starts with, well, kind of nice here, and then, yeah, it's actually nice. Well, yeah, really nice. And then comes, I love this place, or I love this person. Appreciation is the seed of love. So, in this way, we can understand that the nature of Nitya Ananda, of eternal transcendental love, is that ever increasing appreciation for Krishna. And not only for Krishna, but also for all those who are serving Krishna, naturally. It is said that when one sees a Vaishnava, then one should be greatly pleased. It's very nice to see a Vaishnava. Right? It's like, because a Vaishnava is carrying the fruits of his devotional service. Just like a criminal has a black cloud over his head, dark, carries the darkness of all his gruesome sinful activities. A devotee carries the transcendental energy of his devotional service. So how nice to meet a Vaishnava. In this way, we appreciate. Seeing that Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, expands himself, and seeing how in these expansions he is in a very personal way dealing with the living beings. Seeing how Krishna is enjoying his pleasure pastimes. How he is manifesting himself as Balaram, who is, as the Supreme Lord, in the mood of a servant. At the same time, the embodiment of compassion. Because service is the constitutional position of all living beings. And therefore, Balaram is the spark, is the source of inspiration that awakens and reinforces our natural service attitude. That is needed. Because due to the illusory energy, we have lost the servant mentality. In Dante, there is an interesting statement of one of the personalities in the Divine Comedy, who says, "Better a king in hell than a servant in heaven." So this is something. This is something that is the material world. Because what kind of world is this? What kind of world is this material world? This material world is not designed by the desire of the Supreme Lord. The material world is designed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead to fulfill the desire of the living being. So when Lord Mahavishnu is involved in the Sarga, there is Sarga and Visarga. the primary creation, the secondary creation. When Lord Mahavishnu is involved in the primary creation, and these universes come from the poreholes of his body, then it looks like this whole creation is a very personal thing. Comes from his body. Just like a child comes from a mother's body. I mean, that's something, the bond is just something inconceivably intimate. Right? So these universes come from the body of the Lord. But yet, the design of these universes is not according to his desire. The Lord facilitates the desire of the living being to be independent from him. He says, all right, you want to be independent from me. That will be hard because everything that exists is part of me. Just like my brother once told me, he said, I'm ready to meet you, but I don't want to hear anything about Krishna. I said, well, so that's difficult because my whole life is sort of mixed with Krishna now. You know, it's not, so what shall I say? You know, I'll just sit there. But even then, I look connected to Krishna. Can you see it? So our relationship did not develop so well after that. What to do? In the same way, everything is Krishna. So the relationship between Krishna and the living being also did not develop so well. After the living being said, I want to be in a situation independent from you. Krishna's like, I'm not going to do that. That's going to be hard. How to fulfill that? So Krishna saying like, well, that's really not, instead of saying that's not possible, it cannot be done, he just said like, well, okay, it cannot really be done, but what I can do is create a situation where it looks as if you are independent from me. And that's what he did. He created this universe coming from the pores of his body, which is a reflection of the spiritual world, and therefore it is full of archetypes. You know, our Carl Jung is presenting his concept of archetypes and how there is this internal connection that we have with the outside world, and how everything is kind of symbolic, right? Reflecting within us, and why is it so? It is so because this material world is relating to our inner desires. The spiritual world is the perfect place that reciprocates with our deepest nature. Everything there connects with us within. So then here in the material world, because this world is created to fulfill our desire, it relates to all our inherent internal needs and our whole internal psychology. So here we are, finding that the world around us are like also present in the form of symbols within. Very good. Interesting. Yes. So this material world, being a reflection of the spiritual world, is a semblance or an imitation of the original spiritual world. But everything is false. It's false. It's false. False love, false beauty, false teeth. False. Fake. So, false identities, false ego. Carl Jung speaks about swollen, since I'm talking about Jung now, I'm going into the Jung files. Jung is speaking about a swollen ego or a shrunken ego. I kind of like that, you know, see the swollen ego, some big-headed personality walking around, or someone with a shrunken ego. I'm a mouse. Very scared, low self-esteem. So in this way, false ego, false identification, false pride, a false sense of greatness, or a false sense of inferiority. Satsvarupa Maharaj said to Srila Prabhupada, I am nothing. Prabhupada said, you are not nothing, you are something, but you are not what you think you are. That's settled that. Right? So, in this way, we appreciate, we are not what we think we are. When we are proud, false pride. When we are thinking we are nothing, got it wrong again. We are not nothing, we are something, but we are not what we think we are. So false ego, false identification in a false home. Yeah. Home, this is the land of my birth. Do you know? I was born here, my father lived here. His father lived here, was born here, lived here. More than 9 generations we live here. My blood is here. This earth. All these things, you know, like, I mean, false, just false. Misdirected attachment. The attachment, Srila Prabhupada in the introduction of his Nectar of Devotion speaks about the inherent propensity to love. And he's explaining how it has become misdirected. I love my car, you know. I love my car, and if you smash on my car, I smash in your face. You know, it's yes, it's a bumper sticker in Australia. Yes, like this. What can we do? The living being is here to be a king and a queen. Actually, to take the place of Radha and Krishna. Yes, and here we are now. Radha and Krishna. This even sometimes expands into the temple, and I call that Romeo and Juliet with Radha and Krishna in the background. Or Bhakta Romeo and Bhakti and Juliet, sorry. So these things are all going on in the material world, and even in our movement. And only gradually, are we awakening from this deep, illusory, dreamlike state. Meanwhile, Krishna never leaves us alone. Even when we turn away from him, Krishna is deeply personally involved. He creates the universe. He is the one who is like, from him Lord Brahma manifests. He is inspiring Lord Brahma from within. He's very close to Lord Brahma, very intimate. He gives Lord from within, reveals the blueprint to create, to do the secondary creation. Then he meets Lord Brahma personally, and he gives him a handshake, which I kind of like. The original handshake is there in Srimad Bhagavatam between Lord Vishnu and Lord Brahma, the primeval handshake. That's where handshakes come from. Just that you know. So all these things, we see Krishna in so many ways is there. Super soul within the heart. As Aniruddha, he controls the mind. As Pradyumna, he controls the intelligence. In this way, we can appreciate how Krishna never leaves us alone and how much he's always with us in many, many ways. So, when this awakens, this consciousness that actually we are always with Krishna, then gradually the unhappiness which comes about from being frustrated in material life becomes alleviated, and gradually we come to happiness. And as our relationship with Krishna is growing, our happiness is growing. And then the discomfort of the material world, it can be tolerated somehow or other, because it's only on the periphery of our consciousness, somewhere on the external side of the consciousness, because we're so busy remembering Krishna, glorifying Krishna, serving Krishna, just chanting his name, hearing about him, reading about him, just so absorbed that somewhere on the edge of the consciousness, there comes a signal, pain in the back, pain in the front, pain in the top, pain in the bottom, pain in the mind, some pain somewhere. What to do? Just, it's only in the background, because Krishna is amazing. He's so amazing. You even forget the whole material world. We see this in great devotees, like there is the example of Srinivasa Acharya. And Srinivasa Acharya, one day, he just stood on the road, and he just stood frozen, and he had just forgotten about the material world. Internally, he was totally absorbed in the spiritual world, and he was in the spiritual world then. He was so absorbed in the spiritual world, he was there. And then he saw holy pastimes going on, and then he just stood there and he saw the whole thing, and when he came back to external consciousness and realized, then his whole body was covered in color. In this way, we see how the great devotees were just completely transcendental and transcending the bodily experience. So let us at least practice. Since we are right now burdened by the material energy, let us just practice. Abhyasa yoga yukti chetasanam nigamina parimam purusham divyam. Let us practice. Sravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Vishnu Smaranam. These three, at least. The Bhagavad Gita. Let us just get absorbed in hearing, chanting, and remembering. And if we do so, and devotional service, if we do so, then Shravanadi Sudachita Karya Udai, then love of God will awaken. Nityasa Krishna Prema. So that's my hope. Asavanda, I didn't give up, even although still suffering from all these problems that Jung describes. Some people have a swollen foot, But in my case, I have a swollen head. What to do about that? It's a problem. Big-headed. What can I do about it? Anyway, Jai Hare Krishna. It shrinks heads. If you're interested in shrinking of heads, which is a pastime in South America, we know how to do it by chanting Hare Krishna. And in this way, we can return to the blissful reality instead of the nightmare. Wake up, sleeping souls, Gorachanda Bole. Wake up. Sleeping in the lap of this witch Maya too long. Wake up. Wake up. Gorachanda Bole. Jeev Chakra. How nice. So yeah, what a nice movement. It doesn't matter what happens. There always is a solution. That's the thing. You know, in the material world, you got something called the dead-end street. You know, it's like there's no way out of here. Right? Damned if you do, damned if you don't. Right? Any direction you go, you're finished. Right? The Bengali picture. The pit, the man who fell in the pit, who's hanging on the branch. At the bottom of the pit, there's a huge snake. Then he somehow or other is thinking about, dreaming about maybe I'm going to climb up, and at the top there's a tiger looking over the edge into the pit. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. There's no way out of here. There's no way out. And this is the nice thing, you know. One day before Krishna consciousness, not so long before Krishna consciousness, I was sitting in the garden of my parents, and they had very high hedges, you know, like maybe 3 meters high. And the effect was, I sort of felt like that day, I said, it's just like an aquarium, you know. And I got this strange feeling. Actually, this world is like an aquarium. I am sort of in an aquarium, right? And there's no way out of here. And that day I realized it, that I was in an aquarium. Yeah. But that's what I liked about Krishna consciousness. It gives us a way out of here. And that's wonderful. And it's a wonderful way. Because even the way itself is fun. Susukam kartamaviyam. It's joyfully performed. So you don't have to wait. And you have to be good your whole life. Stupaplu. And say your prayer. And then at the end, after a life on your knees, you will get the reward. No. Susukam kartamaviyam. It's already blissful now, and it's going to get better all the time. It's a transcendental adventure. Let's see what more will come. You like sweets? That's okay. Don't like them? From Radhamada Mohan? Yes, I do. Sometimes when I'm here, they give me a whole box. Sometimes. Yes, not bad. Not every time, but sometimes. Yes. So can you imagine what the sweets would be like that Radharani personally cooks? Have you thought of that? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there are many wonderful, there is more and more. We're only at the shore of the ocean of unlimited transcendental appearances. So if you think that Krishna consciousness is, it's okay. No, it is. It's good. Because you get long-term benefit. That's really good. It's very good. At the same time, it's a little limited sometimes. Hare Krishna. Sometimes you just feel like kick your shoes off, watch a movie. No, it's an unlimited adventure. Unlimited. There is so much to explore. Today, Gojun invited me to come for lunch. He says, I'm living in this house where Satchidananda Maharaj used to live. Reminds me of when I used to visit him there. And upstairs he had all these things he collected, because that's Satchidananda Swami. The colorful world of Satchidananda Swami. And he has this is a sort of Lord. He doesn't even say sword, he says a sword. This is a sword. He can't say sword for some reason. He says this is a sword of Lord Nrsimhadev. It is full of mercy. He puts it on my head. Thank you. Then he has 100 other things, and I get all of them on my head. I get some drops here and there. It's like half hour later, I'm transcendentally surcharged. Yes. So there's a lot. My dear devotees, there is so much nectar to discover. I can tell you that. So, very nice. Yes. So let us, somehow or other, make the best use of a bad bargain. Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Oh, good.
Hare Krishna. Is there a danger between prematurely thinking, okay, we transcend this material world, and the over endeavor to achieve material success?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't speaking about ignoring our bodies in the name of transcendence. It's like just saying, this body is like just, it's not relevant, and then just until we're half dead, carried off to a hospital on a stretcher. No, that's not the idea. We are dealing with the material energy, and we are looking after the body and material things, but how important is it? These are just, of course, like when I joined, things were different. First I joined in Vrindavan, stayed in Vrindavan for some time, and then I became quite ill with jaundice, so I took a little time I went home because I was very sick with jaundice, and I thought the Hare Krishna temple is not a place to be very, very sick. So I just was home, and then the second time I moved in the temple in Amsterdam, and then all the dhotis of the brahmacharis, they were just put in a big bundle, and I had to carry that bundle. And I was like a bundle with legs, going around the corner, walking around the corner, and dropping it off in the laundromat, because we would be out on Sankirtan. And then all the dhotis came back, washed at night, and then everybody just grabbed one. Nobody had his own dhoti. So if you were late, you had the old one that was stitched up and this, that, yeah. And that's just like, so one day, I happened to have a nice sleeping bag, and I also needed it because we're sleeping on the floor, and I am like kind of, I use more blankets than ordinary people, right? So one day, one guy walks out with my sleeping bag. I look out the window, I gotta see this devotee. That's my sleeping bag. The senior devotees say, "Don't be so attached." Well, I tell you, 1 year later, I was in Kathmandu, in the temple, and somebody is sleeping in my sleeping bag. I mean, my name was written on the label. So I found him in there, I looked at the label, I saw my name. I just shook the guy out of my sleeping bag. Took it out, took it back, I was, you gotta look after your sleeping bag, I mean, you need it, and so on. So it's not that in the name of transcendence, we let just everyone walk off with our sleeping bag. No way, had my name on. Yeah. The devotee probably wasn't the one who took it, but anyway, he woke up a little rough, I guess. Sorry, Prabhu, for the offense. Any other question? Yes.
Thank you very much for the lecture. And at the very beginning, you talked a little bit about about the fact that Lord Balaram, he takes participation in our life and helps us to develop this desire to serve Krishna. Can you maybe elaborate on that topic a bit more? Because that was like, I would like to hear more about that.
Yeah, so I'll stay with Carl Jung, since I'm with Carl Jung today. So, Carl Jung identifies that we need role models, and that we're always looking for a role model. So, that's very helpful, a role model, because a role model makes it realistic, shows us how it's humanly done. If you speak about you have to just serve Krishna, but how does that work? It can raise so many questions. But then you have a role model, and you see how the role model does it. So Balaram is our role model. He's serving Krishna in such a way. As a menial servant, he becomes, in smaller ways, bigger ways, in a very complete way. So it's very inspiring to see how Balaram is always serving Krishna. And that is one way. We can also pray to Balaram. And Srila Prabhupada said that if you have any problem, in Vrindavan he told the devotees, if you have any problem, just go before the deities and pray to Balaram, and he will give you strength. So this is very important. So we pray to Lord Balaram. We look at his mood of trying to please Krishna, and just in every possible way try to serve Krishna. Like that. He's Adi Guru, the original spiritual master, because he's the original servant. Guru means servant, otherwise, what's the point? Like that. Thank you. Yes.
There's this other extreme to want to endeavor too much in the material world, but most devotees don't have that problem, right?
I think many of us do, actually. I think so. I think many of us are over-endeavoring. Yeah. And especially if you have Germanic blood, that tendency is it's very much in the Germanic nature to over-endeavor. I think so. I have it. I have this over-endeavor. Tell me all about it. I'm just trying to learn to stop it. And then I do it again. So, yeah, it's therefore, we need to be balanced by others. And that's why it's important as a spiritual master, senior Vaishnavas, a community of Vaishnavas will balance that. But without community of Vaishnavas, it will be very difficult to actually be balanced. Yeah, so that's why we are always in community with devotees. Okay. Thank you for being here today. See you later. See you, Prabhupada.
So, Kadamba Kanana Swami.